Welcome to Apéritif. 15 minutes with a specialty cocktail, a delicious nibble, and an iOS app dev lesson. I'm Karen Burns, and this week Flying Start presents an introduction to UIKit with strings, and we're eating Tarragon Potato Salad and drinking a Vodka Buck. Hi everyone, welcome to Apéritif. I'm Karen Burns, founder of Flying Start. Thank you so much for joining us this week. So we have a lot to do this week, so we're going to kind of roll right into it because we're starting with UIKit and we're doing strings. We learned a little bit about strings in the past in Unit 1, but we're going to delve deeper into strings today, which is super exciting. And we're going to be making the Vodka Buck, which is a great drink, super simple. So I think all of you have the ingredients at home. And we're also going to be making one of my very favorite things, a Tarragon Potato Salad. So I have to tell you, this potato salad, it's interesting because it's kind of like a German potato salad, but I learned it when I was working in a French restaurant and I learned it from an Irish guy. So make of it what you will, I guess. I'm not exactly sure, but it's delicious. So I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's roll right into it and have a great week, everyone. And I want to remind you too, to listen, take some time to listen, take some time to reflect and make some change. Be kind to each other. All right, let's get started. If ever there were a day to start with a cocktail, today may be it. So let's get moving with our Vodka Buck. So a fresh lemon, I usually use about half a lemon. Add 1.5 ounces of vodka, more or less, and then top it off with ginger ale. Give it a quick mix. I need one of those really cool, long, skinny spoons with like the swirly handles. Cheers. Here's another dish that I learned when I was a cook at Le Bouchon. My husband actually showed me how to make this. And it's a tarragon potato salad. We used to make this for family meal, especially during the summertime. It was awesome. Take 4 to 6 potatoes, rinse them well, and put them on the stove to boil. You want to cook them all the way through. Depending on the potato, it usually takes about 20 minutes. This potato salad has onion, tarragon, bacon, apple cider vinegar, potatoes. I like Yukon Gold potatoes, and a little mustard, salt, and pepper. So we're going to chop up our onion, a nice small dice, not too fine, but small. Then we're going to take our tarragon off the stem and do a nice chop. Tarragon has a tendency to bruise easily, so make sure you're a little gentle with your tarragon. What we're going to be doing is making a reduction. So we are going to, it's almost like a béarnaise reduction if you've ever made béarnaise sauce. Béarnaise sauce has shallot and tarragon and some cracked black pepper and vinegar. And this is similar, although it's got some bacon in it. And I'm using onions instead of shallots because, again, I'm out of shallots. We cut our bacon up into nice cubes. And we get our pan nice and hot. And we're going to saute our bacon. We don't cook it all the way. We want to cook it about halfway. When the bacon's getting nice and brown, we add the onions. Cook the onions also until they're about 3/4 of the way cooked. Then we're going to add apple cider vinegar. Add the apple cider vinegar. If you don't have apple cider, you can use white wine vinegar. That's okay. Add the tarragon, cracked black pepper, and then cook it until it reduces. You want it to look like this. So there's very little liquid left. It's almost all evaporated. Take your reduction off of the heat and let it cool. Cool to room temperature. This potato salad is best when it's served room temperature or semi-warm. Take the potatoes, the cooked potatoes, peel and dice. Put them in a nice clean bowl. Add your cooled reduction, mayonnaise, salt and pepper, and we're going to mix that well. As you notice, I don't add the mustard until I taste it. The reason is because the vinegar is very acidy, as is mustard. So I only add a little bit of mustard depending on the acidity after I add the reduction. And you're ready. Put it on a plate. I've got some chives actually from the garden that I snip over the top. And this potato salad can be served warm or cold. It is fantastic. Welcome back, and here we are at Unit 2 already, an Introduction to UIKit. In the last unit, we learned a lot about the foundations of Xcode and Swift as a programming language, but in this unit, we're going to go a lot further. We're going to be learning about particulars in Swift. For example, strings, which we're going to focus on today, functions, structures, classes, collections, loops, all of those good things. And we have a big app that we are going to be building at the end of this unit. So we have several weeks to get to that. But today we're going to get started with strings. So what is a string? We talked a little bit about strings in the first unit. Strings are text. Strings are strings of characters. So in this lesson, you're going to learn how to declare a string, how to compare strings, and how to access particular characters within a string. You'll use strings in app development in many ways, all of course involving text. So whether you're representing text or you're collecting input, you will use strings throughout your app development in pretty much, I think, every language. Get started by looking through the vocabulary. For example, case sensitivity, look at concatenation, which is putting two strings together. Look at literal string, string literal, read all of the vocabulary words, and also look through the resources as usual. The programming guide has some great information about strings and characters. Please do yourself a favor and spend some time with the programming guide. It's really a great source. The first thing I want you to do is go to Xcode, and instead of opening up a new project, open up a new playground and just call it My Playground. Remember, playgrounds are an opportunity or a place for you to practice code without a whole ton of commitment. You can view things immediately, see how it looks, see what happens when you write code without opening a brand new project. Let's start by talking about string literals. So a string literal is a raw representation of a string value. It's written with opening and closing quotation marks. We use string literals to write exactly what we want something to say. For example, if we want to print happy birthday, we put happy birthday between the quotes. That is a string literal. Let's make a constant, and we're going to call it string literal. So let string literal equal. A string literal is a raw representation of a string value. It is written with opening and closing quotation marks, as we said. That is our definition for string literal. So when we set a constant, when we set a string literal as a constant, it is immutable, which means it is not changeable. So we're going to write that definition as well as a constant. So let immutable equal. Immutable strings cannot be modified. Immutable strings are constants. Now let's talk about if we want something to say several different lines, so a multiple line string literal. If your string literal is a multiple line, you will use 3 double quotation marks. So instead of just putting what you want to say in between 2 quotation marks and opening and closing, you will start out just like I've shown here by putting 3 quotation marks at the beginning and 3 quotation marks at the end. We use a multiple line string literal when we have a multiple line, like for example, a quote with multiple lines or something that we want printed out or shown with multiple lines, and we want it shown exactly like we've written it. So for example, if we have a poem or something, or here in my example, I'm writing a question and answer, Q, colon, how are you? A, colon, I am fine. I want it to print out exactly like that. So I put the multiple line string literal between 3 quotation marks. Now let's type the print command. And you can see it not only shows up on the right-hand side, but when we enter the print command, it shows up in our console. So we can press these little buttons here next to the output on the right-hand side, and it will show you a little bit larger the result of each value. If we're writing a multi-line string literal and it has quotes, We're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to be using the escape character, which is a backslash, and that will actually print out your string with the quotes. Let's look at the example I have here. If you can see, I declared a constant called multiple line string literal with quotes. And then I used the triple quotation marks at the beginning and at the end. However, you notice where it says, I said, hello, friend. I want those quotes to actually show up. So I use the escape character, which is the backslash, and this is how you do it. You put one in front of the first quotation mark and one before the last quotation mark you want to show. A string doesn't have to be a constant. You can set up a string at the beginning as a variable and have it as an empty string. Perhaps your string will change over time, so that's when you would set it up as a variable and make it empty at the beginning. To do that, we declare a variable, we name it, and we put just 2 empty quotation marks, like I've shown here. If you need to show an individual character, so all characters, whether it's a single character or a collection of characters, are automatically strings in Swift unless you specify that you only want it to be a character. I frankly can't think of when you would use this in that manner. However, if you ever do need just to use one character and you do not want it to be a string, this is how you would do it. You would declare the constant and then you would use a colon character. So let's print our character B, and there we go. We're going to now get into concatenation. Say it with me, concatenation. A very funky word that really just means the combination of 2 strings. So if you have 2 strings and you want to combine them to create a new string or multiple strings, it can be more than one string, that's called concatenation. And you concatenate, I think that's a word, by using the plus operator. For my example here, I have 2 constants, first name and last name, and I'm going to add those 2 together I'm going to concatenate by using the plus operator. So I'm going to make a new variable called my name, and it's going to be a combination of the 2 strings, first name and last name. So it should print out then Karen Burns, correct? So what if I want to add to it? If I want to add to or modify a string value, I can use the plus equals operator. So I'm going to say my name plus equals, and then in quotes, I'm going to add the string says hi. I want to make sure that I leave a space before says so that it prints out correctly. And let's print it out and see what happens. Ooh, good, perfect. It says Karen Burns says hi. However, if you've noticed, I forgot to put a space before Burns. So Karen Burns is one word. We'll go back up and we'll change the variable for last name, or I'm sorry, the constant for last name, and we're going to put a space. And there we go. That fixes that. Now it looks good. Moving on to string interpolation. Yikes, another freaky word, interpolation. So interpolation is inserting a raw value of a constant or a variable into a string by adding a backslash, which is also the escape character, and wrapping it in parentheses. What the heck does that even mean? Well, I don't know, but we're going to practice and find out. So as you'll see, these concepts are a little abstract right now, and when we begin coding and we begin using these and putting these into practice, they'll make a little more sense, I'm hoping, fingers crossed. So let's just take a look at this right now and see if we can figure it out in this abstract concept or context. So I want to write Marcus is 13 years old. That's what I want to write. So I'm going to create 2 constants. One is a string and one is an integer. So I've created the string constant, let puppy name equal, and then I put my puppy's name, Marcus. And then I'm going to create my constant that's going to be an integer. Let age equal 13, right? So 13 is an integer, it is not a string. So when I want to print it out, I want to print out Marcus, but it's not always going to be Marcus, right? Let's say that I would use this in an app where people fill in their own pet's name and their own pet's age. So I want it to be able to have the raw value into that original string, but it's going to be a changing raw value. So I'm going to print this out, print, and then I put the quotation mark, the opening quotation mark, the backslash, which is the escape character. And I put my constant that I want to be a string, and I wrap it in parentheses after the backslash, okay? Then I say is, and then I do the same thing for the age. I'm going to put a backslash, and I'm going to put the integer in parentheses. So it should say, when we print it out, Marcus is 13 years old. We use interpolation in app development a lot more than you realize. We use this for things that are always changing. When we have, for example, user input's a great place to show the use of interpolation. The same thing that we have here. Let's say I'm asking my users to insert their dog's name and age. We would have to use interpolation because we would want them to have their raw value, but it would be the same constant string. Another way to use strings is to check for equality or to compare two values. We can use the equal operators, two equal signs, to check for equality. We can use the lowercase command to check to see if something is written in a different case than we've specified. And we can also use has prefix or has suffix to search for certain values. We use these as Booleans so we can see if something is true or if it's false. You can use the count command to count the number of characters in a string. The example I have here is a password. If I say let the password equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that is 6 characters in the string. Now I've put an if statement. If password count is greater than 10, it's going to print out your password must have 10 characters. So it's going to be false because our character count is not greater than 10. Our character count is 6. So if we add a second if statement, a second Boolean, if password count is less than 10, it will print out your password is good. So it's going to print that out because that's true. Our password count is less than 10, correct? So this is true. It will print your password is good. Contains is also a command you can use when you're working with strings. If you want to search some text to see if it contains something, you can definitely do that. And you do the same thing. You set it up with an if statement. If the greeting contains the phrase you're searching for, this will happen. If it does not contain it, then this will happen. Wow, lots and lots about strings. So probably a lot more than you would ever want to know. Do your labs, read the resources, and practice. Keep practicing. And I'll see you right back here next week for Apéritif, and we will look at functions. Just a reminder, all the resources for today's lesson, as well as past lessons, are located at getaflyingstart.com, app Apéritif. Thanks for joining Flying Start and me, Karen Burns, for this episode of App Apéritif. We made it through strings. We started out UIKit, and we are on our way. I hope you enjoyed your Tarragon Potato Salad, and I really hope you enjoyed your Vodka Buck. And we'll be back next week. So until then, be kind and keep on coding.